Ladies and gentlemen, I want to begin today with a simple idea that changed my life many years ago. And it's this: life doesn't get better by chance. Life gets better by change. Now, that may sound simple, almost too simple, but don't let its simplicity fool you. The things that change your life are rarely complicated. They're usually small, almost invisible, tucked inside your daily routine. And if you learn to change those little things quietly, consistently, life has a remarkable way of opening new doors. Most people think luck is something that happens to you, something that arrives like the weather. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, and always outside your control. But that isn't entirely true. I've found that what we call luck is usually nothing more than preparation meeting opportunity. The prepared person tends to get lucky, and the person who isn't prepared, well, even if the right door appears, they're too busy or too distracted to notice. So today, I want to talk to you about becoming the kind of person luck loves to visit. Not by magic, not by chance, but through tiny habits, the kind Jim Rohn would say, require almost no effort, but yield extraordinary results. These are habits that don't require talent. They don't require a special background or special circumstances. They simply require a decision to begin a new pattern and to stick with it long enough to see its harvest. Because here's what I discovered after years of studying people. Most individuals are waiting for something big to happen before they take action. They wait for the perfect time, the perfect feeling, the perfect opportunity. But the exceptional among us, they don't wait. They prepare. And preparation has a way of attracting opportunity, the same way a magnet draws metal. Let me give you a contrast. The average person wakes up hoping the day will go well. The exceptional person wakes up preparing to make the day go well. One hopes, the other decides. One wishes for luck, the other becomes ready for luck. And I'll tell you, the world responds very differently to each. So in this lesson, we're going to explore 5 of the smallest, simplest, and most powerful habits you can build. Habits that quietly reshape your character until opportunity finds you irresistible. Habits that take almost nothing to begin, but over time, they change the quality of your thinking, the strength of your decisions, the direction of your money, and the consistency of your actions. And when those change, your results change dramatically. By the time we're done today, you'll understand why some people seem to get lucky again and again, while others wait for years with nothing to show. And more importantly, you'll know exactly what to do to shift yourself from waiting for life to preparing for life. Because remember, the small disciplines you practice today begin shaping the blessings you receive tomorrow. Now, if you're ready, let's step into the first idea, and it's one of my favorites, the habit that begins the process of changing your life from the inside out. Now let's talk about this word luck, because it's one of the most misunderstood ideas in the entire conversation of success. Some people think luck is random, like rolling dice. Others think luck is reserved for the talented, or the wealthy, or those who simply happen to be in the right place at the right time. But here's what I learned many years ago, and it changed everything. Luck isn't something you wait for, luck is something you build. Opportunity comes to all of us. It arrives in seasons. It arrives in whispers. It arrives disguised as work. But the question is never whether opportunity will come. The real question is, will you be ready when it does? If the answer is yes, you look lucky. If the answer is no, you look stuck. I call that the great division in life. The difference between people who rise and people who remain the same is not chance, it's preparation. Think of it like planting. A farmer who plants in the spring doesn't pray for a harvest by accident. He knows the harvest is already on its way because he prepared for it. He plowed the soil, planted the seed, watered the field, protected the crop. That's preparation. And because he prepared, the harvest isn't luck, it's the natural result. But imagine the farmer who never plants, never waters, never tends his field, and then sits on the porch hoping something good will grow. That's what most people do. They hope for a miracle while neglecting the disciplines that make miracles possible. Let me give you a simple formula. Preparation, attraction, opportunity, action, result. That's the sequence. Miss the first step and the rest never arrive. But begin the first step even with the smallest commitment, and suddenly life starts to cooperate. When you prepare your mind, you begin to see possibilities others overlook. When you prepare your habits, you develop the discipline to act when the moment appears. When you prepare your finances, you're ready for a chance to invest or a door to open. When you prepare your character, people trust you with bigger responsibilities. One of the great truths I learned is this: you can't trick life into giving you more than you've prepared for. If you want more opportunity, become more prepared. If you want more luck, create more readiness. And if you want more success, sharpen the person you're becoming. Let me offer another contrast. Most people want opportunity to arrive first, then they'll get prepared. But life doesn't work that way. Life says, show me your preparation and I'll show you my opportunity. So our goal is not to chase luck, but to cultivate the kind of daily behaviors that make opportunity almost inevitable. Small disciplines, quiet improvements, tiny habits that shape big futures. Opportunity, you see, tends to favor the person who has already done their homework. And that brings us to the first tiny habit, the first step in becoming luckier in life. A habit that shapes your thinking, enlarges your perspective, and prepares you to recognize the right door when it opens. Let's move into it. Now let's begin with the first tiny habit, one that seems almost too simple to matter, yet carries more weight than most people realize. Jim Rohn used to say, miss a meal if you must, but don't miss your reading. Because feeding the mind, he believed, was just as important as feeding the body. One gives you energy, the other gives you direction. And direction, my friends, is far more valuable. Reading is one of those small disciplines that begins a great transformation. Not overnight, not in one weekend, but day after day, page after page, it quietly alters the way you think. And when you change your thinking, you change your decisions. When you change your decisions, you change your habits. And when you change your habits, your whole life begins to rearrange itself. Most people never discover this because they think reading is optional, something you do when you have extra time. But the people who grow, the people who succeed, the people who seem lucky, they know reading isn't extra, it's essential. Because reading expands your awareness, and awareness prepares you for opportunity. Let me share a simple truth. You can only take advantage of the opportunities you can see. If your mind isn't nourished, you walk right past them. If your mind is ready, you recognize them instantly. Reading sharpens your vocabulary. It strengthens your communication. It deepens your understanding of human behavior. It introduces you to worlds you've never seen and ideas you'd never consider on your own. And suddenly what looked impossible becomes possible simply because you now possess the language, the courage, or the insight to attempt it. Some people say, but Jim, I don't have time to read. Let me give you something to think about. You don't need time, you need intention. 10 minutes a day, 10 pages a day. You'd be amazed at what that can accomplish. At 10 pages a day, you'll read a book every 3 weeks. At that pace, you'll read 17 books a year. And 17 good books can change your entire philosophy. They can change your future. They can change your fortune. What should you read? Read the books that challenge you. Read the books that stretch your imagination. Read about history because success leaves clues. Read about wealth because money doesn't come to the uninformed. Read about human behavior because life is people and people are predictable. Now here's the magic. The more you read, the more prepared you become. And the more prepared you become, the more lucky you appear to others. They'll say, how did you see that opportunity? And the answer is simple. Your mind was trained to notice. Reading prepares you for conversations. It prepares you for decisions. It prepares you for moments that would overwhelm the unprepared. And that's the great secret. Opportunity doesn't reveal itself to the casual thinker. It reveals itself to the prepared mind. Even 10 minutes of reading a day moves you from casual to intentional. And intention is where luck begins. So make this your first tiny habit. Feed your mind daily. A page, a chapter, a paragraph. Just don't miss. Because every book you open becomes another seed planted in the soil of your future. Now, once the mind is fed, it's time to give it direction, something few people ever do with consistency. And that leads us to the next tiny habit, one that Jim Rohn believed could pull your entire life toward a new horizon. Now that we've talked about feeding the mind, let's move to the second tiny habit, one that gives your mind something to work on. And that habit is the daily discipline of writing down your goals. Not once a year, not once every January, but every single day. One of the greatest lessons I learned from Jim Rohn was this: goals are a magnet. They pull you toward the future. They influence your behavior. They shape your decisions. And most importantly, they give your mind a target, something to aim at. Without goals, the mind wanders. With goals, the mind works. Most people live their lives like a ship without a rudder, busy every day, but drifting, moving fast, but going nowhere. They react to circumstances instead of designing them. And when you ask them where they're going, they say, well, I'm just trying to get by. Now, that's not a destination. That's survival. Let me give you the contrast. The average person wakes up and lets the day happen to them. The exceptional person wakes up and tells the day where to go. And the difference is written goals. You see, when you write your goals daily, something remarkable happens. The mind begins searching quietly, consistently, for ideas, for people, for resources that match the direction you've written down. Your attention begins to sharpen. Your awareness expands. Suddenly, what you used to ignore becomes important. What you used to overlook becomes obvious. That's why some people seem to stumble into opportunities. They're not stumbling, they're watching. They've trained their minds to recognize the things that matter. Now, let me give you a simple structure. Each morning, write down 3 goals. 1 personal goal, 1 financial goal, and 1 character goal. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be intentional. Personal could be health, relationships, skills. Financial could be savings, income, investment. Character could be discipline, patience, courage. Write them down. Every morning, not for the sake of the ink, but for the sake of the impression it leaves on your mind. Because the act of writing reactivates the act of becoming. And that's what goals are really about, who you must become to achieve them. Jim Rohn used to say, the major reason for setting a goal is what it makes of you to accomplish it. And that's the truth. Goals shape character long before they shape results. Now here's something interesting. If you stop writing your goals, your direction begins to fade. If you continue writing them, your focus becomes almost unbreakable. Writing your goals daily is like adjusting the sails of your ship. The wind may blow from any direction, but your goals determine where you arrive. Without goals, even a strong wind is useless. With goals, even a light breeze can take you far. So make this your second tiny habit. Put your future on paper every day. The simple act of writing your goals reminds you of who you want to become. And once you define who you want to become, opportunity begins to align itself with your direction. That's when life starts cooperating. That's when people start calling you lucky. Now, once you have a mind that is fed and a future that is written, there is still a third ingredient needed: courage. Because no matter how clear your goals are, progress doesn't begin until you take action. And that brings us to the next tiny habit, the daily habit of courage. Now, let's move to the third tiny habit, one that begins to separate the average from the exceptional. Because it's one thing to feed the mind, another to set your direction. But sooner or later, life will ask you for movement. And that movement requires courage. Not the dramatic kind you see in the movies, but the quiet kind you practice in everyday life. Jim Rohn used to say, everything you want is on the other side of your comfort zone. And isn't that true? All of the progress, all of the breakthroughs, all of the opportunities they live, just a few steps beyond what feels familiar. But most people spend their entire lives reinforcing the walls of their comfort. They avoid the unknown. They retreat from discomfort. They wait for confidence before they take action. But confidence doesn't come first. Courage does. Let me give you a principle to remember. Courage is a habit. If you use it, it grows. If you neglect it, it fades. Most people believe courage is something you either have or you don't. But that's not accurate. Courage is built one small decision at a time, one attempt, one conversation, One moment of stepping forward when everything inside you is whispering, not today. And the moment you practice that just once, you begin to strengthen a part of yourself that will serve you for the rest of your life. So what is this tiny habit? It's simple. Every day, do one thing that requires courage. Just one. Not 10, not 50, one. Maybe it's making the phone call you've been avoiding. Maybe it's asking a question you're afraid to ask. Maybe it's applying for the opportunity you think you're underqualified for. Maybe it's telling the truth when silence would be easier. Maybe it's taking responsibility where you've been making excuses. One act of courage a day begins to crack the pattern of comfort, and once the pattern cracks, the light gets in. And once the light gets in, you see possibilities you were blind to before. Let me give you a contrast. The average person avoids discomfort and wonders why life feels stagnant. The exceptional person seeks challenges and wonders why life keeps expanding. Courage is the difference. Now, why does this tiny habit make you luckier? Because opportunity rarely floats gently into your lap. Opportunity usually hides behind discomfort. It hides behind the phone call you don't want to make, the risk you don't want to take, the skill you're afraid to learn. Every time you take an act of courage, you open another door. And the more doors you open, the more lucky breaks appear. Do this for 30 days, one act of courage a day, and watch what happens. Your confidence grows. Your capacity expands. Your fear shrinks. And suddenly, you become the kind of person opportunity is looking for. Remember, courage is not the absence of fear. It's acting in spite of it. And once you begin practicing that daily, you shift from waiting for life to shaping life. Now that we've talked about courage, let's move on to an area where courage and discipline come together, your financial habits. Because luck flows differently to people who treat their money with respect. And that leads us to the next tiny habit. Now let's move to the fourth tiny habit, one that Jim Rohn spoke about often, sometimes with a smile, sometimes with a warning. And it's the habit of practicing a little financial discipline every single day. Because how you treat your money says a lot about how ready you are for more of it. One of Jim Rohn's classic lines was, if you can't manage $1, you'll never be trusted with $1 million. And that principle holds true in every area of life. Money gravitates toward those who respect it, and it drifts away from those who treat it casually. Most people think they have a money problem. But in truth, they have a discipline problem, and money simply exposes it. If you hand more money to someone who lacks discipline, the money disappears. If you hand the same amount to someone who respects it, the money multiplies. It's not the amount that makes the difference, it's the behavior. So here's the tiny habit. Each day, practice one act of financial respect. Just one. It could be tracking your spending, delaying a purchase, saving a small amount, or reviewing your accounts at night. The act itself doesn't need to be large. What matters is the pattern you begin to build. Let me give you a few examples. Take 2 minutes each night to write down what you spent that day. Set aside a small percentage automatically every morning or week. Use the 24-hour rule before buying anything non-essential. Review your goals and ask, is my spending aligned with my future? These may seem small, but like most small habits, they compound. And compounding, as you've heard before, is the eighth wonder of the world. Jim Rohn used the image of a leaking ship. A small leak, he said, sinks a great ship. And isn't that true? One unnecessary expense today, multiplied by 30 years, becomes financial frustration. But one small discipline today, repeated over 30 years, becomes financial independence. People often say, but Jim, it's just a small purchase. And the answer is, exactly. It's small, which means it's easy to control. But here's the challenge. What is easy to control is also easy to ignore. And if you ignore it long enough, the small becomes significant. Now, how does this habit make you luckier? Because so much of life's opportunity is tied to being financially prepared. A business idea comes along, you're ready. An investment shows up, you're ready. A crisis arrives, you're steady. A connection appears, you're confident, not stressed. Financial discipline creates stability, and stability creates readiness, and readiness attracts opportunity. And to the outside world, that looks exactly like luck. The truth is, life does not reward the casual. Life rewards the intentional, and nothing reveals your intentions more clearly than how you manage your money. So begin today. One small act, consistent, daily, because financial respect always precedes financial increase. Now that we've talked about feeding the mind, setting direction, practicing courage, and honoring your money, there's one more tiny habit that ties all the others together. A habit that transforms experience into wisdom and wisdom into progress. And that brings us to the fifth small discipline that makes a remarkable difference. Now let's move to the fifth and final tiny habit, one that Jim Rohn believed transformed an ordinary life into an extraordinary one. It's the habit of reflecting at the end of each day. Just a few minutes. Nothing dramatic. But those few minutes can turn every day, good or bad, into a stepping stone for the future. Jim Rohn used to say, a life worth living is a life worth recording. Not because the recording itself is impressive, but because the act of reflection shapes your awareness. It refines your thinking. It converts daily experiences into lasting wisdom. And wisdom, as you know, is what guides your decisions when luck seems absent. Most people live the same year 80 times. They repeat the same mistakes, the same routines, the same frustrations, because they never stop long enough to extract the lesson. They move from one day to the next without asking any questions. And a life without questions becomes a life without growth. But the exceptional person, the one who grows, the one who improves, the one who keeps moving forward, they pause each evening, even briefly, and ask themselves, what did I learn today? What did I avoid today? What did I improve today? What should I change tomorrow? Just imagine the strength of a mind that asks those 4 questions every night for a year. Imagine the clarity, the momentum, the maturity. You'd be an entirely different person by the end of the year, not because life got easier, but because you got better at living it. Let me give you a simple structure. 5 minutes before bed. 1 minute. Review the day. What happened? What mattered? 1 minute. Identify the wins. Even the small ones. Especially the small ones. 1 minute. Identify the mistakes. Not for guilt, just for clarity. 1 minute. Extract the lesson. What did today teach you? 1 minute. Set tomorrow's intention. What's the one thing you need to act on next? 5 minutes. That's it. But those 5 minutes begin turning your mind into something rare, a mind that learns from life instead of being shaped by it. Reflection is the difference between repetition and refinement. The average repeats, the exceptional refines. Now, how does this make you luckier? Because wisdom is the foundation of preparation. Preparation attracts opportunity. Opportunity creates luck, and luck creates momentum. Most people are so busy living that they forget to learn. But if you build this small habit, this tiny nightly ritual, you'll grow at a pace that surprises even you. You'll begin seeing patterns. You'll begin anticipating problems. You'll begin making decisions that feel guided, not guessed. And suddenly, people will say, you're lucky, and you'll smile, knowing the truth. It wasn't luck, it was reflection. Now that we've walked through all 5 tiny habits, we need to step back and see how they work together, how small disciplines compound into extraordinary results. Now let's take a step back and see the whole picture. We've talked about feeding your mind, setting your intention, practicing small courage, respecting your money, and ending each day with a lesson. 5 tiny disciplines, each one small enough to ignore, but powerful enough to change everything. Jim Rohn would remind us, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Not every year, not every month, every day. People often imagine that extraordinary results come from extraordinary effort, but the truth is far simpler. Extraordinary results come from ordinary effort, repeated consistently over time. A small improvement repeated daily becomes a giant improvement yearly. A small mistake repeated daily becomes a disaster yearly. And both outcomes look like luck from the outside. Let's look at how these 5 habits compound together. When you feed your mind every morning, you upgrade the software that runs your life. Better inputs create better thinking. Better thinking creates better choices. And better choices repeated create better results. When you set your daily intention, you give your energy direction. Most people wake up and drift. You wake up and decide. And the person with direction will always outperform the person with motion but no map. When you practice a moment of courage, you build a reputation with yourself. You show yourself that you can act even when you don't feel like it. And once you trust yourself, life opens doors that were previously invisible. Confidence is compound interest on courage. When you respect your money daily, you stop living by chance and start living by design. You prepare. You position yourself. You become the kind of person opportunity can land on. And when you end the day with a lesson, you multiply the value of every experience. Life becomes your teacher. Every success sharpens you. Every mistake educates you. Reflection turns living into learning, and learning into leverage. Now imagine all five together. That's when compounding becomes powerful. Because these habits don't add, they multiply. A disciplined mind makes disciplined choices. Disciplined choices create courageous actions. Courageous actions lead to opportunities. Opportunities reward preparation. And preparation is sharpened by reflection. It's a cycle, a rhythm, a quiet engine running beneath your life that keeps pushing you forward. And here's the part most people forget. Compounding doesn't feel powerful at first. It feels slow. It feels ordinary. It feels unexciting. But months later, people start noticing differences you didn't announce. A year later, you've built a life others didn't think possible. 5 years later, you look lucky. And 10 years later, they call you gifted, blessed, special, privileged, anything except the truth. But you'll know what really happened. You started a few small habits, and you never stopped. Jim Rohn taught that the harvest always arrives, never in the same season as the planting, but always in proportion to it. Small seeds, small disciplines, small improvements, repeated daily. Suddenly, you wake up in a different life. Now we move to the final part of this journey, the conclusion. A final reminder, a final challenge, and a final encouragement to begin where all great transformations begin, with a single act of decision. Well, we've reached the end of our conversation. And as Jim Rohn would say, let's finish strong. Because the value of information is always found in the application, not the applause. Ideas don't change your life. Decisions change your life. And the decision to begin, even in the smallest way, can alter the entire trajectory of your future. Now, you may be thinking, where do I start? And the answer is simple. Start small enough that you can do it every day. Not a big leap, not a heroic effort, just a small, quiet commitment that whispers, today I begin. Remember what we covered. Feed your mind with something valuable. Set one intention every morning. Take one small act of courage. Practice one daily money discipline. And end the day with one lesson. 5 tiny habits. And you don't need all 5 on the first day. Start with one. Because success doesn't ask for perfection. It only asks for participation. One step. Jim Rohn used to say, you cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight. That's what these small habits do. They tilt your direction. They shift your momentum. They create the beginnings of a new identity, an identity built on discipline, consistency, and quiet intention. And soon enough, the world takes notice. Not because you told everyone what you were doing, but because results speak louder than intentions. Here's the truth. Most people will never begin. They will wait for the perfect time, the perfect feeling, or the perfect plan, but the perfect time never arrives, and the perfect feeling never stays. Life rewards movement, not hesitation. So make the decision today. Not tomorrow, today. Because each day you wait, you lose a day of compounding. Each day you begin, you gain a day of momentum. Start with the smallest step you can guarantee. Read one page. Set one intention. Take one brave action. Save $1. Write one lesson. If you do it today, you'll likely do it tomorrow. If you do it for a week, you'll feel the shift. If you do it for a month, your confidence will rise. If you do it for a year, your life will not look the same. And years from now, someone will look at you, your progress, your achievements, your discipline, and they'll say, you're lucky. And you'll smile because you'll know the truth. Luck didn't change your life. Habits did. Tiny ones, daily ones, consistent ones. So take the first small step, then take it again tomorrow. And again the next day. Before long, you'll realize something wonderful. You're no longer forcing the habit. You've become the person who lives it. And that is how an ordinary life becomes extraordinary, one small discipline at a time.